Hello and welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another video. This one is captaincy model, where we'll have a look at the top 10 players for game week 21 from my captaincy model. But first, let's have a look at how we got on in game week 20. So not too bad. 6 players returning out of 10, and we'll start at the top. So Salah with 7 points. Obviously not actually the best game from him, really. Not the best game from Liverpool, of course, but he still pops up with a return, as he quite often does. Haaland, he hasn't been as high as 2 for a while. Potentially the week before, actually, against Leicester, he was nice and high, but West Ham at home was too good a fixture for him and City to not be favourites to score quite a few goals. And obviously bag 2. I mean, it's really helped City and him that Savio is playing for starters and playing on the left, because his balls in are just outrageous. He's been the creator over the last couple of weeks. I mentioned him in my players to buy video earlier in the week, so if you haven't already, do go and check that out because it is quite useful. I'll talk about Savio in a bit more detail. But yeah, 13 points for Haaland. Palmer with a 10-pointer, just 1 goal, but he managed to get some bonus in there as well, so 10 points, and that was actually the only difference between Salah and Palmer this week, was just a few bonus points. Watkins was at number 4. Now, his expected minutes of 83 were that high because obviously Duran was suspended. They won't be that high again for the next few weeks at least anyway, now that Duran is back. 2 points was a pretty disappointing return from him, really. I mean, Leicester at home, of course, it's an unbelievable fixture. So he was one to bring in a couple weeks ago, and I'm sure a couple people did bring him in this week or a couple weeks ago. If you bought him in 2 weeks ago, then you did get the haul in game week 19, so it's not as bad. If you bought him in this week, then you've got very unlucky, because he was always going to get good minutes in this perfect fixture, so very, very unlucky. Isak was in 5, 88 expected minutes. Now, I might need to lower this purely because Newcastle keep being in a position where they're 2 or 3 goals up and they can actually rest players in like the 80th minute or so. So he is coming off earlier than this, but purely because they've already won the game. I'm not really sure how to deal with that in expected minutes wise, but I'll probably just leave him high at the moment, especially where the fixtures aren't quite as easy. But yeah, either way, he scored a goal, as he so often has recently. Trent, now this was a really disappointing one. After a 15-pointer in game week 19, he comes up with an absolute stinker, like next level stinker. If you watch the game, you'll know what I mean. Potentially one of the worst performances I've seen in a very, very long time. It was awful. Whether that's related to the Madrid rumours or maybe he just had a bad day, but Dalot absolutely ruined him. And if you get ruined by like a really, really good winger, then fair enough, but Dalot, it's not good. Dalot and Bruno, yeah, down that left side were absolutely fantastic, and Bruno's one we'll talk about when it comes to the game week 21 numbers, because he is high up. Especially if Man United can play as they did against Liverpool, they've got every chance of putting a few goals past Southampton this week. But anyway, 0 points for Trent, a very disappointing one. Son, another very disappointing one, albeit he didn't actually start the game because he was ill. Couldn't have known that when I made this video. I do have to make these captaincy videos quite early in the week, so there will be changes to players' minutes and players' expectations. If I made this video near the deadline, then I wouldn't have had him on 84 expected minutes, but it is what it is. Then Mbeumo continues to impress. 19 points. Absolutely outrageous performance from him and Brentford. Brentford are just so good going forward. Him and Wissa and whoever else plays in that front 3, 2, 4, however many attackers they actually play with. They're just so good. Southampton away was obviously an ideal fixture, so that was always one that kind of where my owners were going to keep him for, because the fixtures around it were pretty awful. I mean, it's Man City up next and then Liverpool, and before Southampton it was a couple of bad fixtures as well. So that he needed to go big in that game to justify keeping him, and he did. So really, really impressive from him. Then Martin Odegaard, again, if I made this video, well, actually I don't think we found out till after the deadline that there was an illness within the Arsenal camp. So obviously Odegaard didn't start. I don't even know if he came on. I'm not actually sure if he came on. Oh, he must have. He got 1 point. So yeah, he did come on. But yeah, I couldn't have known that he wasn't going to start. Obviously, if we did, his expected minutes wouldn't have been 85. So, but to be honest, it wasn't actually a good performance from Arsenal anyway. They haven't played well going forward in quite a long time, since Saka's actually been out, really. I mean, they did put quite a few goals past, not sure what team it was, but they did put quite a few goals past someone a couple of weeks ago. But apart from that, going forward, they haven't really been great. Their defence has been keeping them in games. But yeah, disappointing for Odegaard, just the 1 point. Then KDB came up with 5 points. I believe it was just 1 assist in the game against West Ham. I got him at 65 expected minutes, just because if he starts, which you probably think he will now, then he gets more than 65 minutes. However, there is a chance he does get benched and gets a lot less minutes. So I can't put him up in the 70s or 80s for that reason. I mean, Man City didn't change their lineup between the Leicester game and the West Ham game. Obviously, they played well in both games and they won. However, West Ham did look really dangerous on the break. And if Brentford can do the same next week, then they could be in trouble, because Brentford are much better on the break than West Ham are. But anyway, they didn't change the lineup. They've won both games, so I would be quite surprised if they then changed the lineup. Aside from kind of forced changes, I expect the same lineup. So KDB and Foden, to be honest, Foden was close to this list. They could both be in for some good minutes over the next few weeks. But that's how we got on in Game Week 20. Let's now have a look at the Game Week 21 numbers. Okay, so on screen now we've got 7 of the top 10. I've left the top 3 off for now. We'll talk about these 7 and then reveal the top 3. However, it's no Salah or Haaland in the top 3, so you can probably guess who the top 3 are, but we'll go through these players first. Now, Havertz is at number 10. His expected minutes are pretty tough at the moment. There was a time when he was just kind of a high 80s guy, but now that Jesus is back in the picture, it's actually very tough to decide what his expected minutes are, because it's probably quite likely that Jesus starts up front. He has done in the last few games, albeit Havertz wasn't available for all of them. But now they're both available. To be honest though, they haven't been that great over the last couple of games, Arsenal, regardless. So it is a little bit tough to predict who's going to start up front. If they were playing well with Jesus up front, I'd say Jesus just continues. But the last couple of games haven't been great, albeit they also weren't great with Havertz up front against Newcastle in the Cup. So it is a tough one. I've got him at 75. However, the reason I've got him so high, I mean, if it was any other player that was a rotation risk, I'd have him much lower in the 60s probably. Because if they start, they'll probably get a good amount of minutes, but there's a chance they don't. However, Havertz can also play in one of the centre mid roles, in the kind of 8/10 roles. So that's the reason I've got him a bit higher, just because he's got a chance of playing in 2 positions. I mean, the fixture's great. You'll notice that there's 3 Arsenal players, 3 Arsenal attackers in this list, because the fixture's so great. Tottenham are kind of a mess defensively. I mean, their first choice goalkeeper's out. Their 3 centre-backs are out. So they don't have any fit centre-backs. The defence is actually a bit of a mess at the best of times anyway. So with injuries, it's obviously not great either. However, against Newcastle at the weekend, they actually played pretty well considering the players they had on the pitch, and they had an illness as well. So a couple of players weren't kind of fit and available because of that. But they played pretty well against Newcastle. It was one of the better performances I've seen from Spurs in a few weeks. So who knows what Spurs is going to turn up, but also who knows what Arsenal is going to turn up. both of them have been a bit hit and miss recently, so that game could go anywhere. And obviously it's a North London derby, so who knows what's going to happen in that game regardless. Then we've got Eze at number 9. Now, I've got his expected minutes at 82 this week. He's another one that's quite tough. Before his foot injury, he came back from a hamstring injury, I believe, and his minutes were so low. They were in the 50s, 60s, up at 70 at the highest. He then got a bit of a foot injury, which wasn't muscle related. He's come back from that and played, I think it was 88 and 85 minutes or something along those lines anyway. And well, he's played 3 games since that, so all of them in the 80s, but I just struggle to put his numbers any higher than 82 at the moment. If we see continuous and repeated 80 plus minutes, then maybe I creep him up, but at the minute 82 seems okay. Now, he's obviously in this list because he's playing against Leicester. It's an away fixture, but playing against Leicester is obviously one of the fixtures that we like. They are in the bottom 3 for goals conceded this season. I don't think I need to explain why Leicester is a good fixture. It just is. And Eze is the talisman for that team. Most things go through him. And Munoz, to be fair. Munoz is actually one of the most ridiculously attacking defenders at the moment. If you haven't watched my players to buy video, as I mentioned earlier, he's in that, and I go through him in a bit more detail, but Munoz is unbelievable. Then we got Anthony Gordon at number 8. Now, Eddie Howe has said he might have a little bit of a problem. I've got him at 80 minutes because sometimes he does tend to come off a bit early, but I think we saw him have a clash with, I think it was Kulusevski, and he kind of got a shoulder to the face almost, but not sure if that will actually keep him out. I mean, it shouldn't do because he played against Arsenal in the Cup anyway, so you'd think he's fine. However, he does tend to come off a little bit early, so I've got his minutes at 80. Now obviously Wolves at home is a great fixture. We've seen Nottingham Forest put 3 goals past them on Monday night, so very, very good fixture, and Newcastle are playing so good right now, so he is definitely one you should be looking to buy if you have a midfield slot that you're looking at. Martinelli, I've got him at 77 minutes. He's another one that's more difficult to predict. I mean, we know that Nwaneri has now got an injury, so you would expect that Martinelli plays most of the minutes on the right. I think Nwaneri was probably the only threat. With Saka out, Nwaneri was the only threat to Martinelli's minutes on that right wing where Saka usually plays. So potentially his minutes could be higher than this, which would put him, it would probably only put him into 6th above Odegaard, but yeah, he is definitely a good option. Again, if you're looking for a more budget midfielder, then I think he's only 6.8 million, so he really is good now that Nwaneri's out. Odegaard, he's always going to be high just because he probably takes the next penalty with Saka out, so he will always be high on this list when Arsenal have a good fixture. He has not been playing great recently though, so I'm not sure if I'd be bringing him in right now, to be honest. I prefer using less funds on someone like Martinelli or just Gordon, to be honest. But yeah, he's high on this list. Now we've got Haaland. Brentford away. Brentford defence isn't good, so that is a good fixture. Brentford are better at home though, which this game obviously is for them. So I think there are definitely better players to captain. If you own Haaland, I probably wouldn't captain him this week just because there are much better fixtures for other players. However, if you do own Haaland, then he's definitely not a sell. He is a keep for this week and for next week. Good fixtures. Salah is in 4th. Now, this is probably the lowest he's been in quite a long time. That's because he's playing Nottingham Forest away. We know that the Nottingham Forest defence has been brilliant. They've kept 4 clean sheets in their last 4 Premier League games, I believe. Their defence is just good. I highly doubt they'll keep a clean sheet in this game, though, just because the Liverpool attack is ridiculously good. Although, if we see the same Liverpool that turned up against Man United, I think it was more Man United being good than Liverpool being bad, but still, I think Liverpool will be better than they were against Man United anyway. So it wouldn't surprise me if Salah did haul, but I think there are better options, and let's talk about those now. So, in 3rd, Bruno Fernandes. Bruno Fernandes absolutely run the show against Liverpool. at the weekend. He was unbelievable. So he is definitely one to look at buying. I'm looking at buying him myself in my own team. Southampton at home is as good a fixture as it gets, obviously. So, I mean, Brentford just put 5 past them. So, and that was at Southampton as well. This is at Old Trafford. So you'd hope that Man United can keep their whatever they had going against Liverpool. You'd hope that they could bring that this weekend. However, it might have just been because it was kind of a derby, but the fixture's so good that Bruno Fernandes is just a great option. Then Isak hasn't not scored in ages, or hasn't not got points in so long, that when he's playing Wolves at home, he's always going to be right up there. It's an unbelievable fixture. And then Palmer has Bournemouth at home as well. Probably not as good a fixture as Wolves at home or Southampton at home, but we know that Palmer, well, for starters, Palmer's a midfielder, so he gets more points than Isak for a goal. But also, Chelsea are just slightly more reliable than United are. So that's the reason that he's top. But to be honest, the top 3 are very close. The top 2 are unbelievably close. The top 3 are very close. And to be honest, the top 5 are all pretty close. So there's some very good options this week. I don't think you can go wrong with any of the top 3 or Salah, to be honest, or Haaland as well. All of the top 5, I don't think you can go far wrong with. But that's all for this one. If you like the video, make sure you hit like, make sure you subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.